101 and welcome to I need to sort this out, don't I? We need to have a name for the audience because it's just me saying the same thing over again. Anyway, welcome to Replit 101 Coding Helpline, where we attempt to solve all your coding problems in 1 hour. And we never get through all the tabs I have open, which is no big deal because there are a lot of tabs. And the Ask Forum is really growing in scope. There are so many questions now that when I attempt to open the tabs for each question to have a look at them, I get rate limited. So I'll have to be really nice to Ethan and Ian in the Ask Forums to see if they can unblock my IP address and stop that rate limiting for me, because that would be really, really nice. Now, first things first, as ever, let's have a look at what's new in Replit since last time I saw you. And where can I put myself? I always go in the wrong corner. Every time I do this, I end up in the corner where nothing seems to work very well. In fact, I'm going to put myself down here because I want to show you a really cool thing that literally rolled out today. Now, we're not doing any publicity about this until next week, but so many times when you create a REPL of any kind, you want a database. And of course, we use Nix. You can bring databases in, but then you have all that setting up fuss, and it's all running in the same REPL. We have a way now for you to bring in a Postgres SQL database with a couple of clicks, and it's really, really nice. I'll grab a Python REPL just to show you this. And again, this is literally launched today. It's a soft launch, so you guys in the audience can go and play with it if you like. It's really, really nice. I'm in the middle of finishing up our Learn course on it and just how to use it for a transactional database, but it is brilliant. So, as ever, we've still got REPL-DB if your database needs are, very, very minimal. They're just storing simple data or key value pairs, but our Postgres SQL implementation is great. I'll bring it up and I'll pop it over in this corner. In fact, there we go. Now, it's as simple as clicking a button. The cost is 100 cycles a day, so it's $1 a day to run it. And our provider is Neon. They do great serverless database infrastructure. It's really, really cool. And I'm just going to click the button. I'm going to tell it that I'm happy to pay that amount. And boom, I've got a database set up and ready to go. Now, what's really nice about this is that you can do live editing of the database contents just there. You can pin queries used previously, and this persists across all your REPLs. But the thing I love most, if you enjoy MySQL as much as I do, and I'm pulling a face for a reason there because I love MySQL, I love relational database stuff, I really do. It really tickles a part of my brain that's really really loves doing this sort of stuff. But I always have to look up the syntax of some of the queries, particularly when I'm using a weird join or something like that. But now, if you've got Ghostwriter turned on, you can build your SQL queries with Ghostwriter. So if I just say create, there we go. It'll give me some suggestions. I'm going to create a table called users and let it fill in the rest for me. I'm doing very little here. I'm just accepting its suggestions. And I can get a decent bit of data in there really, really quickly. And of course, if I customize the prompt and I feed the prompt, I give it the name of the field, it'll suggest stuff for me. And I don't know about you guys, but whenever I try to do a timestamp and set it to a specific time zone, I'm Googling straight away because I'm like, I do this once every so often. The nice thing about this is that once we run this, we can pin it. So we can keep it stored at the top of our query history, and we can revisit that. Now, when we run it, there we go. It runs, and we can simply view that directly in there. I'm going to actually move it so it's a bit wider and a bit bigger so we can actually see what's going on there. And if I go into my users table, I've got my stuff there. Should we add a user? I can't remember what the schema was now. I've ID, name, and age is what I really need. So I'll get rid of that, and I'll go to insert into users, name, age. Here we go. It's even given us a conflict option, which is really cool. Let's run that. Oh, maybe get rid of the conflict option. I've probably set something up wrong. There we go. Run that query. Get rid of the query history. What have I done wrong now? Well, let's assume it works, because if I show you another database that I've been working on earlier on today, I can show you that this is really, really cool. Let's have a look. I think I probably left it unnamed. This is the thing. When you use it all the time, you just go, let's click the button. That'd be cool. Here we go. Let me show you here. So at the bottom there, you'll see I've got my database tab. This is a completely different database. But if I go to see database contents, you'll see I've got multiple tables here, and I've got a users table, and it gives me a preview of the data in it quite quickly. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what terrible, terrible things to show people, David, that you're storing passwords in plain text. I know. We should be salting and hashing it. I know, but this is just an example for a Learn video, and I do make a big deal of that anyway. But I think this is really, really good, because the limitations I've always had with databases is just, how do you quickly view the contents of it? You have to have maybe a local SQL Explorer, or you have to have PHP-MyAdmin or similar. And this is just a nice, easy way of being able to query and mess with the data live, but also connect to the database with just a simple line. And by the way, line 6 here is the line where we connect to the database. It's one line. And it is so good. You can spin up a database and get going in a few minutes' time. So that's what's new on Replit at the moment. Now, we've got a few questions coming in. I'm going to pop this up from Trazen. All those years studying SQL for nothing. No, you and me both, my friend. You and me both. I remember at university, the SQL unit we had to do, which was, probably about 6 months long, and the final exam for that, it was just the most random SQL queries you could ever imagine. It was just bizarre stuff. And I remember getting to the last question and just going, nope, I'm done. I'm not even going to start writing that when my brain hurts. And I think I got like 90% in the final exam or something like that. I do really like SQL, but sometimes those queries are crazy. I bring up Leroy here. He's learning C++. Wow, even more C's than you could possibly want. No, C++, I assume you mean. And you need to use SQL. Well, SQL is basically just the language of the database. So if you want to store anything more than simplistic data, then a database is really, really good. And things like MySQL, and particularly Postgres SQL, which is what we're showing here, is really, really good for large-scale database work. By the way, I knew nothing about Postgres before I started work on these videos and looking at this. Postgres is amazing. It has data types for arrays and JSON. You can just dump it into a database. It's the most fantastic thing you've ever seen. I nerded out proper hard. Grayson said, learning SQL allows you to understand how databases work in general, so it's always useful to learn. Yeah, it really is. Honestly, the ability to just query a database, multiple tables, relational databases, just gives you much more flexibility in what you can do with a program. And there's just so much that we can do there. I'm going to say hi to a few people. Hi to Angie. Hi to Buddy. It does feel like a while since the last one, Buddy. You are right. Absolutely. And today, we're going to start by taking a look at one question which really, really hurt me this week. And it's a question about the day 96 question on 100 days of code. Because, as you might be able to see here, the example I gave of web scraping was to scrape Yelp.com. It was literally the first thing I showed. Since we launched day 96, which is what, about a month ago, they've put something in so that it blocks scraping, which is so much fun. So much fun. I think Ian has said, what was it? It was, I'm sure he mentioned what the thing was. Yeah, CloudFront. So originally, the original plan for day 100 was to build an Amazon web scraping bot. And I've done like small work with Amazon web scraping before, nothing major, just run it once a day or once a week or something to check on things. As I was building it for the day 100 lesson, I started getting back these sort of messages where instead of getting the actual code of the page, it was saying, it's against our terms to scrape Amazon. And I put my head in my hands, and so rewrote that entire lesson to just use smaller sites, independent sites that you probably wouldn't check more regularly, which was fine. But day 96, I'm going to have to rewrite that entire lesson. But this is one of the issues with web scraping. And one of the reasons why, if you can, you should always try and use APIs to get data from websites. Because web scraping involves you being able to access the site, pulling the content off it, and the content being laid out semantically in the same way. Now, if a website goes through a big redesign, or maybe they just mess with the tags to mess with people that are scraping, as websites used to do, then you do get situations like this where your carefully constructed code suddenly becomes the most fragile thing in the world and falls apart. I worked with a student once who built a web scraper to collect secondhand listings for airplane sales. So I didn't know secondhand airplane sales was a thing. Apparently it is. And I was having quite a fun voyeuristic few minutes going through and looking at the different planes I could buy in my local area. But the issue we had with the scrapers was they were just so fragile, and the people maintaining the websites weren't exactly maintaining them properly. So you didn't have as much consistency in the data as you'd like. Again, the thing that would solve all these is websites having APIs, but websites don't always have APIs. So this is just a lesson, really, in that no matter how much work you put into a project with a web scraper in it, all it takes is for somebody to turn on something like CloudFront, and you're done. Now, I am tempted to rewrite this with a different site, but so if anybody's got any ideas for a similar site to Yelp where I can get what did I do, restaurant listings or something that is unlikely to be blocking scraping, please let me know, because I do need to go back in and rewrite day 96. But if anybody is looking at day 96, as I've said here, just take the idea and run with it in a different place. Now, I wanted to have a look at Trazen's comment as well, because I want to start off with this one because disappointing. Luckily, the day 96 solution is about scraping Y Combinator. Well, it's about scraping Hacker News, really, and filtering it with some ideas. So mine's filtered down to a list of words, which I believe is just, here we go. These are the sort of words I'm looking for. There's only one post on Hacker News at the moment with anything to do with Python, and it's an advert for Thonny, which is, again, if the developers of Thonny are watching this, love your effort, guys. But if you ever used it, it's an offline IDE, and it's just not. It's a learner's IDE. It definitely is a learner's IDE, but that's why I love Replit. That's why I love Replit. It's much nicer. But luckily, that still works. So I just wanted to shout that out. Right, let's have a look, Trazen, because we've got one from you, we've got one from Angie, which I want to get to first before we jump in to my, let's have a look, billions of tabs that I've got open. I always feel bad when I show you guys that. Billions and billions of tabs. So Trazen popped this in before the live stream today. And Trazen, I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced. If I'm mispronouncing it, let me know, please, because I'm terrible with people's usernames. I'm just trying my best to pronounce them, but there we go. So the question is, I'm struggling with inline CSS. I want to start using Framer, but it doesn't allow style sheets. Oh, that's interesting. I don't know what Framer is, so we'll have a look in a moment. It requires styled components. An example of simple HTML is styled in React seems hard to find. So we're talking about here, instead of using, again, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll start a simple HTML REPL, and I'll just explain to people the difference between inline styling and CSS styling, because it is significantly different. Now, I'm the sort of person, unfortunately, that used both, and I made terrible code as a result. So let's take this. Let's make this an H1, first level heading, in other words. And we'll style this using CSS, and then we'll start using inline. So there we go. This is the standard CSS that you get, the default stylings. Let's go and edit the CSS file. So if I edit the H1s, what I can do, I can give it a series of properties. So I can do things like, then if I just pick red or something, I'll get a color picker and I can be a bit more exciting with it. Let's do a nice vibrant green today. There we go. And if I refresh that, there we go. What I've told the web browser is basically, look, use any H1s you see and apply that color to it. Okay, let's have a look at inline CSS. And Hydrogen said this, why use inline CSS anymore? In this case, I know that Trazen needs to use it because he says Framer doesn't support star sheets, which is horrendous. But, you know, if it's not supported, you need to use something else. But inline CSS is this. Now, with any tag at all, what we can do is we can add to it a style. If I just refresh that as it is, nothing should change. But a style allows you to add CSS to an individual tag. And what we used to use it for really was you'd be editing raw HTML and the main CSS file would be, you know, hundreds and hundreds of lines long. And all you want is one piece of text to be a slightly different color, or normally you want one div to be 2 pixels to the left, something like that. So you'd use inline CSS just to go, oh, look, override this style. And I believe I'm right in saying that the order is that we use the CSS style sheet first, and then anything inline overwrites that. In fact, we'll test that in a minute. So I think adjust the size here. I'm going to make it 50 pixels, which should be much bigger. He says, as it all fails badly. Let's just make it something like underlined. I think I'm after font weight here. Yes. So font weight. Oh, if I can spell weight. We'll change it to normal because it's bold at the moment, I believe. So if I refresh this now, hopefully this will come up. There we go. That is thinner now. It was bold before, now it's thinner. Let's see which takes precedence. If I go into my style.css and I do font weight, I can't spell weight today. Okay, I've got my keyboard look a centimeter to the left, and let's make it bold. If I refresh that, then we'll see which is more important to it. Yeah, so it'll do the CSS file first, and then it'll apply any inline CSS. Now, this looks horrible if you're putting a big list of things in, because the thing about CSS is that we can just structure it and it looks really nice. But if I'm doing inline, I'm just putting a big line full of different commands separated by semicolons, which is a bit yucky to use, but it's quick. So this, first of all, is what Trazen's talking about when he's talking about inline stylings. And what's the component, Trazen? Trazen, if you're there, let me know what Framer is. I'll do a quick search for it now. Framer React. There we go. Here it is. Have a look. Oh, motion. Well, that's cool. And it's so bad that they don't support star sheets. Like, you'd think that star sheets would be a really important thing to have to bring this all in. Let's have a look at examples here. Well, I mean, these are cool effects to get. They're very, very cool effects to get. But yeah, that's cool. Let's have a look then. Oh, so is it the case? Sorry, is it the case that you can't apply a star sheet? Oh, sorry, right. Sorry, I picked the wrong thing. Trazen, if you can put a link in the chat, we'll go and have a look at it. Let's get on to the solutions a minute, because the examples that I picked up were from my very friendly ChatGPT. And again, I would encourage you to use this if you are dealing with questions like this, because what ChatGPT is very, very good for is phrasing questions like this. Like I've just said, give me an example of a styled HTML component without CSS. I've said Reacty because I couldn't spell, but there's some examples there. Now, again, I am learning React at the moment, so I can't tell you, I couldn't like 100% back up how great this is, but I'm sure we can give it a go. So you can see there that the way they've brought it in is they've had to use double curly braces. Now, I assume this is because it wants a literal, or is that how they get single quotes to come up? Anyway, I haven't got that far in my React knowledge yet, but there's an example of that. So the way React works is that it provides HTML as as a value basically, and pulls it into the page when that component is required. So when we define a button, we define the style and the HTML for the button, and we can just pull it in as a single item, which is really, really cool and is really blowing my mind with the flexibility of it. I really, really like the way React works. As a PHP person in a previous life, that might shock you, but I really, really like the way it works. So here's the example here, and it is just working in that same way. It's popping that stuff within there, which is very disappointing, isn't it? Yeah, Tayson, you said it's horrendous. It's the only way it allows custom code. I mean, yeah, I like for a modern web development framework, for a modern development stack, like I would imagine there's lots of people, lots of companies that would want to include something like this that would just turn their nose up at it, because how do you automate? How do you like check this stuff? If you're working in a big team and you want to add this stuff to it, then it's just nasty. But if it's a no code page designer, I think I've used different no code page designers over the years. You know, I was a high school teacher, and we use no code page designers a lot, especially to get people to build pages before we were talking about how HTML actually works and stuff like that. But yeah, what a pain. There we go. So there's the first example. The second example is a div component, and it's the same thing. It's that stuff we looked at in the HTML, but the way in which it's structured is with those double curly braces to pass out the code of it. Same with paragraph there. Oh, ChatGPT is giving us a warning. I love this. It's worth mentioning that inline styles are not recommended for production level applications. Well, I'm not surprised. Can you imagine how, like, we've already talked today about building code that is fragile. Fragile code, like a web scraper, means that at any point something could change, something could break, and you as a developer are trying to fix and sort it out. This is 10 times worse if you're not a full-time developer or it's a side project, because it's taking time away that you don't have. This seems very fragile to me. I mean, imagine you do this and decide to restyle your website components. That is a lot of work to fix that. So instead, it's best to use a CSS preprocess such as Sass-less or CSS, and a JavaScript library such as style components. So, I mean, ChatGPT Trazen is basically saying to you, look, love the effort, but please use CSS. I'll be honest with you, I've only ever used like preprocessors like Sass a couple of times. They seem like really good things, but the amount of effort to sort of pre-process your CSS and all that has never been the scale of the projects I've been working on independently. Let's have a look. I'm starting second guessing my choice of platform, but I'm still glad this got cleared up. Well, let us know how you get on, Trace, and especially if you have any code or any like example pages that you can share with us. I'm sure we'd all be excited to see where you get with that, because that is absolutely fascinating. And if we can pop a link to that, I'd love to know what it was. What was it? Sorry, it was Framer no code page designer. Have a look. It's worth having a look at these things. I'm hoping it's this one, framer.com. Oh, it looks better. Looks better. Let's have a look. Oh, start for free. Let's have a look. Okay. I feel like I'm doing a sales pitch for this other website now. I just wanted to see what it was like so we can have. Oh, right. Just say I'm a designer. I'm not, clearly. Yeah. Oh, right. I'm giving up. Sorry. Sorry, Trace. I'm giving up on that. I don't think I could be bothered to do that. Let's have a look at some of these examples and see what it's like. Yeah, Trace, it is the worst sales pitch ever. You can do what you want, but you can't put your own CSS in. So yeah, let's have a look. There's some nice stuff here, you know. There's some nice stuff going on. Can I look at them? Can I look at them live? Yeah, I mean these are nice sites. These are nice things being built, but you're relying very much on, on the will of whoever's built it before you, aren't you? Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I do think there's a world in which no code starts combining with AI. I think that'd be quite an interesting place for us to go. Right, so there was another pinned question for live. Let's get rid of that a second, and let me see if I can find it. Oh, here it is. Right, it's from Angie, and Angie says, I've had some problems with Pretty Print in my coding challenges for Python. It came up fine when it cut and paste, but I have trouble having it update for some reason when I ran the code. Angie, if you've got a link to a specific REPL, I'm happy to take a look at it. What I'll do is just talk through the idea of Pretty Print, and we'll just see how that could be something as well that, again, might fall into this category of fragile. And maybe we got a theme for the week. Maybe the theme for the week is fragile code and why you shouldn't have it. Pretty Print is one of those things. It's a little bit more contained because you're writing the data structure side of it. You're saying this is what the data looks like, so print it out like this. And there are actually a bunch of libraries that can help you with this. Off the top of my head, I can't think of them because they've all got very generic names like Printer and Prettifier, and no, Prettifier is a plugin, isn't it? But we'll have a look anyway. So the idea of a Pretty Printer is that if you've got something like a 2D list that you want to print out in a nice way, you can write a function that customizes the way it's printed out. So let's start with a simple list. See if Ghostwriter can help me come up with a list of cars. There we go. Thank you. I'm going to do a simple one-dimensional list at the moment. And if I would just print that out, what we get is, yeah, like that is just the code for how a list is structured. So it's not a great thing to have. It's not a great thing to show. It's nasty. So we could write a loop to print that out, couldn't we? We could write for car in cars, print car. And again, we're getting there now because we're unable to remember the syntax of Python then. Good work. This is the problem when you go and learn another language. You go and learn another language and forgetting all the parts that you need to. So you can see there that we've already improved the output significantly just by printing it in a list rather than printing it as code on the screen. But again, not ideal. Maybe you want a number next to it. If it becomes a two-dimensional list, then it gets even worse because let's make that a bit more interesting. Let's have like, I don't know, like 1997 BMW on Ghostwriter to help me up with some data. So look like, oh, there we go. Thank you, Ghostwriter. Now, this is one of the reasons I can't be without Ghostwriter anymore. When you're making up lists of data, Ghostwriter is very, very easy to just go, yeah, I've seen what you're doing. Here's some examples of things, especially if they're realistic. So I've just got a bunch of dates and things. And again, if I print out like that, it's nasty again, isn't it? It's nasty again. So what I got to do, I got to put another list, haven't I? I got to like for item in car, print item. Even this is going to be yucky. Even this is going to be nasty because like, what does that even mean? We got to start customizing that. So one of the things that I like to do is write a subroutine. called pretty print. So def print. The concept of pretty printing is a thing that exists, so it's not a big deal. I'm going to send that cars, which is a local variable now, but I'm going to use it, and I'm going to just paste in the code that I had previously and sort out my indentation. Then I'm going to call the subroutine, and if you're wondering why is he going to all this effort, it's pretty much because subroutines are a way to replicate and make more generic things that you're building. So the thing I'm building is a pretty printer. Whenever I want to print out my list of cars, I can call it, no matter where I am in my code. If my code is 20,000 lines long and print appears in 40 places, 20,000 lines of code, 40, that would be weird. So imagine it appears in 40 places. I'm just calling it 40 times instead. And don't worry, it's just nice to explain something. So don't worry. I like to go to the details here. So one of the things we do here is, we add some things. So we say like at the end of each line is going to be something like a tab. A tab would be what, /t. So we run that and we go, oh, cool. Yeah, it's a bit better, a bit more laid out. Something weird is going on with this. It's like in the tab space or something, but it's looking all right. And then we could then print a blank line under each one. We could change color between each part. That's looking much, much better now, isn't it? We could change color between each part. We could underline bits. We could even try and make it look a bit like a box if we wanted to. So we could do like print a line and a space, nothing at the end. We could print space and a line before we do the blank one there. It's in, sorry. Space and line. That's what that looks like. Yeah, you see the sort of things I'm doing. If we combine that with F strings and centering and stuff like that, we could make that look really, really nice there. The problem is, and this might be, Angie, where like you fell down on something, it's just like changing that around a little bit or having one inconsistent row. Let's imagine I go to this one and I put like a Mustang, like a Ford Mustang. I know nothing about cars, by the way. I'm just scratching at things from my memory. Well, as soon as you got that, then, well, it's broken the order and the pretty print looks weird. So, great. Pretty print is going to be a little bit fragile because you've designed it around one data structure. And if you feed it other things, it's going to get confused and it's going to freak out already. So Andrew, thank you for that question. I hope that I've helped out a little bit. Don't worry too much if your pretty print function isn't working as you'd like. In fact, let's have a look in the package manager, see what we've got. Have we got any pretty printing stuff going on? Here we go. There's one just called pretty. There's loads of stuff there. There's one called print pretty. There's a bunch of packages that you can install that would do it for you and probably in a nicer way than you would write yourself. So as with everything in coding, most of the time somebody's built something like what you're planning to do and may have done it slightly better. So it's always worth going in and taking a look. Hydrogen saying Postgres is already out. It was literally soft launched today. Hydrogen literally soft launched today. We're doing the marketing for it on Monday, I believe. So there'll be a learn course and doctor updated and all that stuff on Monday. So you can play with it now if you want to, but hold on if you'd like to see my bald noggin explaining things to you and showing you how it works. But it is really nice. I need to find a way to hide it from my employer or I'll be replaced by it. I assume that's AI based. Yeah. Don't forget though that it's we take for granted how well we can massage a lot of these features. As people that learn to program, as people that learn to code, as people that know how to do things like this, these AI tools are helpful to us, and they're really 10x's for us. They can improve our productivity. I mean, those of you that are learners in the audience, if you go and get the Ghostwriter trial and turn it on, you'll bomb through the 100 days of code because it'll be suggesting things for you to solve your problem. And as long as you know enough to work out whether that will solve your problem or not, then you'll be in a good place. The problem comes when we have people that are not developers, not coders, and don't have a basic understanding of it, trying to, use something like ChatGPT to build something big. ChatGPT is great for building things, and people with the ability to follow through and a simple understanding of code can do great things with it. People with outstanding knowledge of code can do wonderful things with it. I mean, when I use Ghostwriter, I feel like a professional developer, and I'm a teacher. I teach these concepts. I haven't built big things in a long time, but I built a system recently for managing the PR we have to do weekly to update all the events on the community hub. And I just built like a simple CMS for us to use internally. I built that in a weekend because I had Ghostwriter helping me out the entire time, helping me with the boring bits, helping me with the repetitious bits, and also helping me with things like suggesting security concerns, or how do I upload to a folder and name it a certain thing? I've done it in PHP, I know, but how do I do it in Flask? Well, it helped me out to do that. So because I know what I'm talking about, it 10x's me really well, and 10x of somebody that knows what they're talking about is pretty good. Now, if you're a full stack web developer and you're using these tools, amazing. Adrian, links to the docs are broken at the moment because the docs are being treated as the marketing stuff. So the doc stuff for the Postgres SQL should be there on Monday, I hope. But it is reasonably straightforward. Yeah, you're right, Dresden. TomTom is absolutely useless. I've got to tell you guys, one of the most embarrassing interactions I ever had as a teacher. It was probably about 2007, something like that. TomTom's as a brand were the leading sat-nav manufacturer, and they were reasonably new, ubiquitous technology. And some of my students were talking about TomToms in the back of the classroom, and I joined in with my thoughts, and they looked at me like I was insane. Turns out they were musicians talking about some kind of drum. I felt like a moron, but there we go. Whenever I see the word TomTom now, I always double check that we're talking about the same thing. But Trazen, you're absolutely right. If you're in a destination, it's no good to you. If you're entrepreneurial and you don't know how to code, ChatGPT and Ghostwriter can really help you out. But if you know how to code, it is 10xing your productivity and making you a much better programmer. I assume, Trazen, it's taken away your link there. But yeah, it's great. I used ChatGPT and Ghostwriter when I was writing the Ghostwriter course because I needed to get examples of modern ways of doing things that in JavaScript that I'd never done. Or if I had done it, I'd done it in a really old-fashioned way because my JavaScript knowledge is a little older. And so I find that very, very useful for giving me all those examples and stuff like that. And check it out. Honestly, check out some of the packages, because if you can find a good pretty printer in a package, you won't need to write anything yourself, and you can probably customize it to your heart's content. I honestly can't remember which ones I've used because as you can see, they've all got quite straightforward, quite consistent names. But they're not the same thing. ChatGPT and Ghostwriter are different. They're based on different technologies. I don't want to give you spoilers about where Ghostwriter's heading, but we just got back from our hack week, where the entire company gets together and we sort of hack and build examples and show what's happening with things. The future of Ghostwriter, let me tell you, is very, very bright indeed, and it can't come quick enough for me. ChatGPT is a different thing because it's more leveraging size of model, and it's not just focused on coding. It is focused on a larger selection of human knowledge. So in fact, actually, do you know what? If you're interested in this topic, one of the best things you can do is, there was a live stream earlier today which kicked off our new hackathon, which is in partnership with Weights and Biases. where we're giving participants in the hackathon access to GPUs for free, I believe. Don't quote me on that. You might need to check. But we're giving access to GPUs to do machine learning and AI-based hackathons and developments. If you've got any interest in that, or you've got friends that are, please share that around. But our CEO Amjad had a chat and talked about AI in that, and I think he is a great thought leader on this, because he's the person calling the shots as to where we go with Ghostwriter. I think Ghostwriter is a great product, but he's the man in the know there. And if you're interested in this conversation, go and take a look at that live stream from earlier today on our YouTube channel in our live section. But it was a good chat. Trazen also said ChatGPT doesn't autofill. Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, the nice thing, as you've seen with me working today, I leave Ghostwriter on all the time now. In fact, I recorded my first learning video, Ghostwriter left on. I normally turn it off. I'd left it turned on because it was a video for, when I'm talking about Postgres SQL, I'm assuming I'm not talking to very new programmers there. I'm assuming I'm talking to people who know what it is and have an interest in using it. And so the learned content I'm producing there is for people that have a higher level of understanding of what's going on. So I can leave Ghostwriter on in the videos, and it's actually really, really cool to show what it's suggesting and how easy you can get to it. For instance, the nice thing about the Postgres SQL implementation is two clicks and 2 lines of code, and you've connected to it. Whatever language you're working in then will have a different framework for passing queries onto the database and getting the results. Now, in Python, that's a thing called cursor. And I always remember cursor being something that I fought with. I didn't have a single problem with the Ghostwriter, because it prompted me and reminded me to close it afterwards, and was even showing me the syntax for how to replace the variables and stuff like that. It was great. Ghostwriter fills in inline, and ChatGPT just gives you generics. I mean, I give you a good example here if you want to. Like, let's ask ChatGPT, can you give me an example of a Python program that stores a 2D list of car models the year they were released, and uses a pretty print function, it's quite a subroutine, to output it nicely to the terminal. Now, again, one of the things you need to be able to do is write that prompt. I'm sure we've all played with things like DALL-E and I can't remember what the open source version is at the moment, even though that's one I've been playing with, Stable Diffusion. The prompting of that is an art of its own. Let's see what ChatGPT does for this same thing. Now, ChatGPT is under a big load today, so whilst that's having a think, oh, here we go. They've really slowed this animation down, and it's really frustrating me. Oh, well, there we go. This is using the pprint library. I think this was an older one. So it's storing very similar to what we've done. But notice this isn't in a code editor. This is just dumping a bunch of code for us. Okay. What we will do, though, is we'll go and get that code, copy it. And this is why Replit is so great, because we can jump over to the REPL, we can paste over the top of it, and we can see what actually happens when we run it. ChatGPT has not had a great deal there. Let's have a look. Did it give us anything else? Oh, well, yeah, you say that. So ChatGPT is saying you get this beautiful output. Look at the red and the green. I'm just going to say this to ChatGPT. It's white here. It's white here. This isn't working for you. So, I mean, I could ask, what was that one library we saw? Let's have a look. Let's go back to the package manager. This top one, Pretty, is a pprint successor. So let's try that. And we can just say, can you give me that code again, but use the Pretty library instead of pprint? And again, we wait for the result. But the nice thing about something like ChatGPT is it remembers where you are in the conversation. Oh, right. So it didn't even listen to me. It really didn't listen to me. It's like, I'm going to use a different library. So, I mean, Trazen said, like it's like having a personal mentor. It is, but it's also like having a personal mentor that isn't really listening to you. Angie came up with sorry, I'm clicking the wrong comment then, Angie, but I'll bring this up here, and I'm going to ignore this for now because it's ChatGPT is ignoring me. And Angie said, I think this is a really important point. What if you're not great at coding yet? I haven't tried Ghostwriter because I'm still learning and I'm afraid of getting dependent on it. Now, I have this question a lot from teachers, from students, from former students saying, I've used AI a lot to help me. Is that a problem? My personal view is this. You are never going to be working in a professional development job where these AI tools are not available to you. If you learn to code and you use the AI tool and it helps, well, you've learned to code in a modern way. I think that's perfectly fine. I understand if you'd rather not and you'd rather get all the knowledge for yourself, first of all, that's perfectly fine. But, we do use things like syntax highlighting, autocomplete. All these things are technologies that didn't exist at some point. And I'm sure, well, I know that there are some programmers that learn to program, by typing into Notepad and then using the terminal, who refused to use IDEs for years because they thought they'd get lazy. If you have any ambitions to work in software development, or you have ambitions to write your own code, and you think you're going to be working in the future, you're going to have an AI assistant to help you. Now, it might be something you have to pay for yourself. It might be something you have to get the company to pay for. But the reality is you'll have it. So I don't think there's anything wrong with having your AI assistant there to help you out. Don't worry about getting reliant on it, because the reality is that most professional programmers already are reliant on something like Ghostwriter or what's the GitHub version, Microsoft's version. I can never remember. But, those sort of AI tools are there. I think our CEO Amjad said something like 50% of his code is written by an AI, and he feels like a cyborg. And, he's a professional software engineer. We live in the future. We really do. And there's no point in worrying about being dependent upon something that you're always going to have. I'll just give you one example, because when I was in secondary school, my maths teacher would always go to me, well, you won't have a calculator with you all the time. Well, Mr. White, I've got a supercomputer with me all the time, everywhere I go, no matter where I go. So things change. It's okay to be reliant on technologies that are ubiquitous, I think. So Angie, don't worry. Everyone's self-confidence could be better with things like this. Tracy, yes. Stack Overflow can get a bit nasty from time to time. Oh, this is an interesting one, because Al, the mega nerd, I love that, Al. That's brilliant. So maybe that's what we should call our audience, the mega nerds. That would be good. I quite like that. I like that, but if people are offended by it, I'll stand back from that. This is great. They should make a Stack Overflow AI, which makes Stack Overflow like code right in your code, and maybe puts a sarcastic answer in it. Now, what I think is hilarious is that Stack Overflow banned AI answers, haven't they? Because it's really difficult to sort that out. My understanding is that they are working on the next version of GPT, which is the model they're using. We've got GPT-3 at the moment. GPT-4 is in development, or is close to being done, and will be trained on a bigger data set. But I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. The thing I'm interested in, by the way, is where we go with it, because you had DALL-E being released, and DALL-E's made by the same people that make ChatGPT, by the way. It's made by OpenAI. So DALL-E is the image generation one. And then how many months was it? It was like 3 months after that was a thing that we had Stable Diffusion. I'm really interested in seeing what the open source version of GPT-3 looks like, and how it works, and if it is as similar as Stable Diffusion is to DALL-E. I think that's going to be interesting in the next few months. Grayson says ChatGPT works both ways. You can say explain what this code does, and it saves you hours of googling. Certainly does. But I love our explain code feature in Replit because I can do it in line. If you've not used this, by the way, it's part of Ghostwriter. Saves you so much time, especially if you're looking at other people's code. Trying to read other people's code, especially if they're trying to be too clever for their own good, is a nightmare. And that explain code tool is amazing. And it's very contextual. So if you pick an entire program, you get stuff like that. Yeah, this cool stuff here. Fuchsia, let me pull this up. Sorry. How come we aren't talking about Midjourney? That uses Discord as its UI. Weird, but cool. I think that's the main reason I've avoided using it, to be honest. I've used it once or twice, but I use Discord, but I wouldn't say I'm like a Discord native. So having to learn Discord user interface paradigms just to like access it was always a bit of a, maybe step back. Angie, that probably is true. I can't use it in an interview. yeah, that probably is a fair. I mean, the reality is, programming interviews are a different thing, and I'm sure there are many people in the chat right now that could tell you about their experience with them. If you've ever heard of leaked code, it's a common thing. Fuchsia, yeah, you should do a bit of stand-up, my friend. I'm relying on a heart stem. That's a ubiquitous technology. Yes, it is. Thankfully, yes, it is. Oh no, sorry, Al. What I was trying to say is that DALL-E is OpenAI's image generation algorithm, and it's closed source. And you have to pay for access to that. But things like Stable Diffusion are open source equivalents made by other organizations. And honestly, as long as you can prompt it correctly, I think Stable Diffusion is on par with DALL-E. You may have a different opinion to me, but certainly for the stuff that I've prodded with both of those things, I think they're about on par. And so the point I was trying to make, was that OpenAI releases their closed source version GPT-3, and they release ChatGPT for you to play with it and make it better. But the ideas from that and the size of it can then be implemented by the open source community. And I'm interested to see what the open source community come up with as based on GPT-3. I think it'll be really interesting to see what the open source version of that looks like. Codes and Gamer says, the main problem I have found with ChatGPT code, when you try to explain 3D rendering to it, it begins to fail. I'm sure it does. The problem is that the more esoteric, I say 3D rendering is not really esoteric, but it's certainly more esoteric than code that prints out a list. And I think the more esoteric the code is, yes, you are going to struggle with it, because the AI just hasn't got the data set to be trained on properly. What we need is some sort of combination between humans dumping their knowledge into a place where an AI can access it, because then we'd get all that specialism going on. I don't know how realistic that would be to do, but there we go. Trayson says, you can see what other people are prompting. You can continue on their prompts. They continue yours. This is Midjourney, I believe, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, this is totally on me. This is totally on me. Just not being, the biggest fan in the world of Discord. I use it. I've built servers on it. I build Discord bots, but it's just not where I live for my communication. So totally on me. Maybe you guys have sort of like convinced me to do that. Angie, AI is much weirder than we think it is. I was reading a book about the basic stages of AI very, very recently, and how it can, and when trained on data of a knock-knock joke, it can come up with hilarious jokes before it understands how to construct a sentence in English, which I think is fascinating because it's looking for different relationships between data. Trayson says replicates open source. Oh, I've not heard about replicate. Sorry. Much weaker than DALI or Midjourney, but they really encourage people to join and create their own generators. I mean, I haven't read much into this, but of course, there's a bunch of issues with training an AI on artwork that are going to court soon, which will be really interesting to see how that all works. Because, of course, a human drawing something or painting something has been influenced by other things it's seen. And I suppose that's the way the AI is working as well. So it'll be interesting to see how all that works. Fuchsia says, how about Hasbro talking about releasing AI Dungeon Masters? Oh, that's interesting. I've not heard about this. So maybe Fuchsia can give us a bit more detail. Came on the whole OGL drama, which followed this whole, yeah. Well, there's a bunch of D&D drama anyway, wasn't there, from Wizards of the Coast? When they changing their licensing? That's what I think I read about there. But no, I didn't know about Hasbro releasing AI Dungeon Masters. That would be quite cool, wouldn't it? Because I don't know about you, I didn't have those sort of friends that wanted to play D&D with me. Luckily, now I work for Replit. We have regular D&D sessions as a team, which is brilliant. I never got to experience that as a young man. I would love to have, but I just didn't have those sort of friends. Having an AI DM, Dungeon Master, would be great for people that were in my situation, I think. Sorry if I banged the microphone then, everyone. Having read both of those books, Fuchsia, I actually read a book on basic AI training. I can't remember what it was called because I was reading it on my Kindle. And as with everything you read electronically, because you haven't got the cover staring at you constantly, you immediately forget what it's called afterwards. But I will go and take a look in my Kindle, and I'll come back next fortnight with what that book was. But yeah. Manny just says, we'll be finishing up in a second. How much money can you cash out with 10,000 REPL cycles? So what's that? That's about $1,000, I believe. So I'm not sure what the cash out limit is at the moment. You have to go and check the docs for that. But we would take a 25% cut of that. So if that is $1,000, that would mean you get $750 out. I'm not sure if that's within the cashing out limit yet. I imagine it is, but you'll have to go and check the docs yourself to make sure that's all good. Well, do you know what? That was a very good Replit 101. If we can come up with a name for Replit 101 viewers, I will gladly use it. Until then, 101ers, Replers, mega nerds, whatever we want to be called. I hope you've had a good hour with me. I've enjoyed it. Once again, I think I've got through 2 of the actual problems on the Ask Forum. Maybe next time we'll just see how it goes, and I won't even open a single question, and we'll just deal with the chat. But thanks so much for spending time with me. Thank you for contributing in the chat. I hope that we've been of some benefit to those of you that had questions. Trazen, I hope that you have some good luck with your inline CSS, and my sympathies do go out to you, my friend. And Angie, I hope you have some luck with your pretty print function, and that you can get one of the libraries working nicely for you. Dave's Minions. Oh, I don't know. There's, okay. Dave's Minions. We'll if you want to be Dave's Minions, we can be. Maybe we'll do a vote on it though, because I feel a bit like a dictator there. But yes, shirts need to be made. Shirts need to be made, as do the Dave plushies. We need to make sure they are a thing that appears. Guys, as ever, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoy Replit 101. We got a good group of people that turn up and contribute, and honestly, it's the highlight of my fortnight. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in a fortnight's time when I can bring you up to date on what's new, and we can look at some more problems and some coding issues and see if we can solve them. And as ever, Fuchsia can entertain us. But yes, Fuchsia, good luck with that. Good luck with that. Luckily, it is ubiquitous technology, so I think we'll be okay. Right. Thanks, everyone, and I shall see you in a fortnight.